Good morning, Las Vegas. Right now at 6, fires are still raging across Southern California with thousands of homes and acres of land burned to ashes.
At least 25 people are now dead, according to officials. And as crews fight two of the most destructive fires on record, our Joe Moeller is on the ground, bringing us the latest updates on our neighbors to the west. Good morning, Joe.
Hey there, good morning to both of you back in Las Vegas. We are live in Altadena this morning where the Eaton fire destroyed thousands of structures. Both of these major blazes, the Eaton fire and the Palisades fire, continue to burn this morning. They're working on containment. This blaze is on the other side of the hills just north of us. They're working on that. It's so far 35% contained, but burned 14,000 acres across town. That Palisades fire has burned around 23,000 acres. And it's 18% contained this morning. But we're getting a look at the destruction here in Altadena, just north of Los Angeles. I'll take a look. This right over here is called Lake Avenue. This is one of the businesses on Lake Avenue. You can see this structure was destroyed from that blaze last week. But up and down Lake Avenue, there are just a number of buildings and businesses that were destroyed. Churches, schools. It's actually shocking to see how much destruction there is. And if you turn off of Lake Avenue, you see residential streets and there's apartment buildings like this one you see here, just leveled next door. I can just see a chimney next door to that, another home just completely destroyed. We shot some video yesterday here in Altadena. We'll go ahead and pull that up. You can see the destruction happening here in Altadena. You just drive down these streets and it's absolutely shocking to see how many homes are destroyed. They're estimating around 12,000 structures have been destroyed in these major blazes here in Southern California, here in Altadena, and also over in the Malibu Palisades area. We were talking to some officials yesterday. They say just here in Altadena, they've counted at least 3,000 structures destroyed, but they still have to inspect another 7,000. They're still continuing their search for around 24 missing people in these blazes. And in addition to that, there are at least 24 people who have passed away in these fires as well. Now the work does begin. This area is still evacuated. People are hoping to get back here soon, but they are still going through these buildings. Cal Fire officials say they are inspecting them to see how much damage there is.
So we're looking at attributes of the home. We're looking at the level of damage or destruction. So we go off of percentages. So if the home was unaffected, we'll catalog that as an unaffected structure up to more than 50% of the structure being destroyed.
And they're also looking into how these blazes started. There have been crews, ATF crews in Malibu, and also crews here looking at different things like these power lines to see how these fires started, trying to figure out if arson was involved in any of these blazes. So that's another part of this. But the big concern here on this Wednesday is the wind. The wind is supposed to pick up. It was supposed to pick up yesterday, but it didn't end up being that bad, at least here in Altadena. When we were here, the wind wasn't that bad. And as of this morning, not much of a breeze at all, which is the good news, but they are telling people to be prepared if more wind does come here. We know that it's a big issue here in Southern California and a big issue that caused this fire to get so big last week and to become so deadly.
And Joe, you can offer a really important perspective here, someone who grew up in Southern California, not far from where all of this is taking place. What is it like to see areas you're so fond of and familiar with change so drastically overnight?
Yeah, Angela, you're right. I grew up about 40 minutes from here in northeast Orange County, which there's hills just like the ones we see here. And you know, around the fall usually is when that's what we used to call fire season. With the Santa Ana winds that come through, they come from a different direction, not from the ocean, but from inland flowing out to the ocean. Those winds can be really intense, and you know, usually in the fall that there's a concern around fires. I mean, this is January. We usually never have fires in Southern California at this time, but that was just a perfect storm with that wind and the low precipitation, the low humidity. It's always a concern, and those winds can definitely be intense. So it's sad to see this, but I can see how it happens with those intense winds.
Yeah, and Joe, from the images we've seen, just absolutely heartbreaking. I'm curious if you've seen any of the neighbors who have been able to return to some of those areas to kind of check out and survey some of the damage for themselves.
Yeah, people are still waiting to get in here. They're trying to figure out what their neighborhood looks like. As you can imagine, they're anxiously waiting. Thousands of people still evacuated this hour. And I'm going to have our photojournalist kind of bear with me. I'm going to have you actually pan down the street here, Rudy. I want to show you one of the reasons why people aren't allowed back here. Look how dark it is. This is a residential street. There's nothing to see because there's no electricity here in this area. So crews are still working to get electricity back. As you can imagine, there's a lot of utility poles. I can see wires on the ground still. So it's not safe for people to return. And there's still that wind concern. So people are not allowed back in yet. So people are still either in shelters, hotels, with family around Southern California. So they're anxiously waiting to come back here. And also the Palisades fire, that area is still under evacuation as crews still work there. So as you can imagine, people around Southern California, thousands and tens of thousands of people just anxiously waiting, many of them watching coverage like this to try and see if they can spot or recognize anything from their neighborhoods.
Yeah, Joe, thank you so much. Live in Altadena, and we know we're expecting an update from officials, and so hopefully you'll be there and will bring us more information.